It was never your fault. Think back on a time when you blamed yourself for someone else's actions. Maybe you did or say something in the past that you regretted and it is still affecting you today. Or maybe you blame yourself for something you saw and felt that you should have done or said something about it. This does not mean that we shouldn't acknowledge when we are at fault. But self-blame equals to emotionally abusing ourselves. Self-blame can hold us back from moving forward. It is when we replay a stressful or traumatic event we feel we could have changed over and over in our minds. I can remember when I was about 15 years old, I started working as an announcer at our very first Belize Christian radio station. I was extremely excited, not only because I love God, but I was also going to be able to play some of my favorite songs that I love to listen to. I remembered sitting in the announcing room and the director of the radio station walked in and sat beside me as he usually did when training me. On this particular day, I was making some birthday announcements when he placed his hand under my skirt. While announcing, I pushed his hand off my legs and stopped in the middle of my announcements and I yelled at him. I was very upset and in shock. What do you think you're doing? While picking up the phone to call my parents, no one didn't pick up the phone at the end. I walked outside the studio where he followed me and kept on apologizing over and over again. I was so upset that I forgot that I had to walk about 4 miles from the radio station to get home. He kept on apologizing over and over, saying how sorry he was, and it was never going to happen again. After trying to call my parents again and couldn't reach them, he offered to take me home, as he usually do. And I agreed. I blamed myself for a long time for agreeing to have him take me home after what he did. When he took me home, I didn't tell my parents right away. And I also regretted that moment, that very moment when he dropped me off, because I waited for him to leave, still in shock and processing what just took place and thinking about how my dad might react, knowing he had a gun in his possession. I did not want him to do something that he would regret for the rest of his life. I waited until the director drove off before I told my dad. He was very furious, as I predicted, and he tried to run into the house to get his gun. My mother, who was right beside him, held him back and talked to him until he was calm enough to think about the right way to handle the situation. My father called the head of the board and they spoke to him. They did their investigations and I gave my report. The director later admitted to what he did and was fired from his leadership role and faced the consequences to his actions. After what he did, and I allowed him to take me home, was me struggling to organize the information of what just took place and thinking, did I do something that made him think it was okay for him to touch me? As time went on, I stopped blaming myself because I realized that He had to give account for his own actions. And we cannot control what others does. The only person that we can control is ourselves. I encourage you today, do not blame yourself. It was not your fault. Self-blame can be a habit that comes from our childhood trauma that allows us to feel like mostly everything that happened or happens to us is our fault. But the truth of the matter is, it is not your fault. You are not to blame yourself for the past mistakes that you've made. You do not have to feel responsible for the actions of others. You can stop feeling ashamed about the past. You can free yourself of saying these words. If only I could have. This wouldn't have happened if. It's not your fault. Do not use the words, it's my fault. I am weak because I made that decision. Or I could have. Or I didn't fight back hard enough. These are words that can emotionally abuse your mind into believing that it's your fault. These words can hinder the realistic views of the event you experience and hinders the way that you recover from blaming yourself. Self-blame can lead to the feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, which can lead to depression and suicidal thoughts. So today, I challenge you to first forgive yourself for blaming yourself. Because everybody makes mistakes. When you decide to stop blaming yourself, only then can you move forward in life and be successful. Find someone you trust to share your experience with. It could be a counselor, close friend, a family member, or even your pastor. Pay attention to what you think in your mind about yourself and the words that you use about yourself. For example, I should have. Don't use those type of words. Use words like, I could be happy, I could forgive myself, I could love myself instead of blaming myself. And work towards loving and loving and caring for you. Use that experience that you went through to gain something positive from it. I am happy today that I'm sharing my story and that I told my parents instead of them never knowing. Because if I held back that information from them, it could have been where he could have taken advantage of other girls if I didn't speak up when I did. So today I really challenge you to take responsibility and not blame yourself for others' actions, and start loving yourself. Clear your mind of negative thoughts, because they can become negative habits that can devour you for the rest of your life. Self-talk, some positive words of affirmations to motivate yourself, to boost your self-esteem, and practice each morning, because I do this. Practice each morning, and I found out that it really helped. Practice each morning to have a positive attitude and tell yourself that today is a new day, a new chapter, a new you. Do not blame yourself. It's not your fault.